Hey guys, it's Cece here with Wholesaling House's Future Alliance. I hope you're having a great day. So, I've had a lot of people message me about the particular scripts that I'm using whenever I text message sellers. So, I've explained to a lot of people that my whole process is hands off, and I like text messaging so much because it allows me to essentially outsource this to my virtual assistant. And also, my virtual assistants are the ones who are managing the whole process. So I have a supervisor managing the other people that text message my sellers. And these guys could be easily trainable and start pretty much immediately. They don't have to know the whole process from start to finish regarding wholesaling. They don't even really need to understand wholesaling. They could basically do the job by just using my seller response sheet that I created. And the great thing about this sheet is that I monitored, hundreds of thousands of text messages that came in and made note of the most common messages and replies that we would get. And what I noticed, I was typing the same thing over and over and over again. So there's only so many different responses that sellers can have to our initial text message. And so we basically made like a flow chart, and this response sheet was the result of that flow chart, indicating which are the best messages to send back to the sellers that come through. Another reason why I really like text messaging is because this whole process is pretty straightforward, and you're getting a lot more people with cell phones that don't want to talk like on the phone, but they'll be able to text back. And even the older sellers are having cell phones now. I know personally my grandma, she's like 75. She is on Facebook all the time and has her cell phone and texts me. She texts me all the time. So people that are in our age range of our perfect seller, meaning that, around 55 to maybe 70 years old, these people have cell phones now. This may not have been the truth or the case 10 years ago, but now it definitely is the norm. So that's why I think this is the perfect timing to be doing text message marketing. So I'm going to go through essentially the script that our company uses across all of our markets to text message sellers. And I'll also show you some examples of our text messaging app that we use, and how our VAs are really responding in a very organic way to sellers. And the great thing about this is that the sellers don't even realize they're talking to people from the Philippines, because the way that our team wrote the responses up, it seems like somebody American who's a native English speaker and understands real estate is typing the responses. First, we'll start off with our main message that we send to the sellers. So this is what it looks like. Hello, and then the hashtag here is actually a field that merges the first name with the seller inside of our application. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. I'm acquisitions manager's name. If we're doing marketing for our joint venture partners and they're handling the messages and they're going to be talking to the sellers, we might put their name in there, or we might use something generic like Alex with target city home buyers. So we keep it generic, and we keep the name of the company generic because we don't want any sort of legal pushback, right? Everything that we're doing is above board because we're not looking to sell anything. We're looking to buy. So we're not really concerned about, violating any laws, because the laws are in our favor, right? But you'll get a lot of people that whenever we message them personally think that we're violating their privacy. With that's not the case. It's the same thing as sending somebody a yellow letter. We would get the same sort of feedback because the yellow letters would be so personalized. So it's the same thing here. So we'll use a generic name like Charleston Homebuyers, the Houston Homebuyers. Just make sure somebody in your market isn't using this name actively. It's pretty generic, but somebody could be using this name in the market. And you want to say, I'm interested in buying your house at another mail merge field, so address. Have you thought about selling recently? And I always say, if there's less than 10 characters left, don't say recently. It just depends on how long the acquisitions manager's name is and the name of the company that you're using. So that's the initial response. So an example would look like this. Hello, John. I'm Miguel with the Miami Home Buyers. I'm interested in buying your house at 123 Main Street. Have you thought about selling? We leave it at that. And I actually have it really simple, color coded here with if a good response comes in, if they say yeah, we say, okay, I'll reach out to discuss an offer shortly. If they say no, boom, you can respond with that. Now, our team, since we're doing a lot of volume, we don't respond to no's. We just, like skip over those. You can reply to those if you're doing smaller volume to basically keep the conversation open, because if you have this kind of no response, they may say, oh, you're not a robot, and they may want to continue a conversation. That's happened before. But for us, we're only focused on pretty much the low-hanging fruit and the people that say yes, or anybody who wants an offer that we could develop a conversation with. No's, we just don't have time to do those since we're doing about 10,000 to 20,000 messages a day. So the responses are coming in. We'll get anywhere from 1 to 2,000 responses over the course of the business day. And that's just a full-time job in itself for one VA to handle. And sometimes, it requires 2 or 3 to be in one account to try to handle all those responses coming in. So we skip over the no's. I'll give you a few examples here, and then I'll go over these responses based on the examples. So here is our text messaging application. This is just for internal use. I've had a lot of people hit me up. If you're interested, let me know. And I'm thinking about releasing a public version of this application. It won't look like this. It'll be a little bit sleeker, but our team is the only one that uses it. I developed the application. And Blip Leads was the previous company that my partner and I own, where we did lead generation for investors. That's why that's there. But let's go into some of the responses here. So look, this seller said, how did you get my number? And guess what our VA said? I found your number through Google. I try to find people near the properties I purchased to see if they want to sell. Are you interested in selling? The right price? Who knows? Name your price. And then they can say, my offer is dependent on the overall condition of the property. Can you tell me a little bit about it? When was the last time it updated? It was updated. I do buy houses as is. And then they responded back. It looks like the seller responded back much later. Our seller or our VA will probably respond back to the seller once they jump online in the morning. But he went on to discuss basically the condition of the house. So what we want is essentially to get a number out of the seller, right? So we want them to tell us about the property, start telling us about the condition of it, and then that's when we ask them and we lead them on this trail to basically getting a number out of them. So they're doing a lot of the work that an acquisitions manager would do on the phone, right? Now they're not negotiating. I would call it light negotiating / screening the lead. Now they're able to do this a little bit more in depth than if they were cold calling, because you just get way further with text messaging, because it's going to get to a point where the virtual assistant, unless they've been with you for a long time, doesn't understand a lot about real estate. So they can't ask a lot of these questions on the fly, or answer a lot of these questions, or ask follow-up questions on the fly. They're basically just going to put information on a property information sheet. With this, it sounds way more natural because they're texting back, and they're texting back based on how we would respond as American investors. So they're automatically going to get further in the conversation. So I will actually show you on the seller response sheet what they did and how they responded back to the sellers, all without us monitoring it. This is literally the first time I'm looking at this message, and they actually did it right. I don't even have to worry about them messaging back correctly. It's awesome. So how do you get my number? All right. So how did you get my number? That's a common question we get. I found your number through Google. Boom. They pasted it there. Are you interested in selling? So we always try to revert the conversation back on them selling. Right price? Who knows? Name your price. And so basically that is them asking, what's your offer? Right? So if they say, name your price, what's your offer? They say, my offer is dependent on the condition. They did the right thing by pasting that there. And then the seller came through and told them about the condition. So literally, like that all happened um, with the virtual assistant, and now we know that we have a warm lead here. Imagine if we just found this person and they said, "Okay, how do you get my number?" and we just left it at that, and we didn't respond back. You could have missed out on a potential lead, right? So this lead isn't hot, but it's a warm lead. So based on how they respond to this, we'll probably go ahead and put this in Podio and tag our acquisitions manager to comp the property out and to go ahead and give them an offer. So this is like reason number 125 why I like text messaging. Let's do another example. So the seller said 2-story house. Then our guy said, "Are you interested in selling it?" Then they say, "I try calling your phone, yada, yada, yada." So we always try to say, "Hey, are you interested in selling it?" We don't want our acquisitions manager just making a whole bunch of calls to bogus sellers. Also, too, we're not going to task our VAs to call these guys because they're not good at calling on the phone, right? So we noticed that, and that's one of our company policies. We don't have virtual assistants calling the phone. Only American-based acquisitions team members. So they said, "I will give you a call." And then they said, "Not selling at the moment." Boom. And then this is actually one we get a lot. So when they say not selling, right? That's one response. But if they say not selling at the moment, right now, I forgot the question that I put here. Not selling. Okay, yeah, so here it is. So not yet, not now. So basically they're asking that when they said not selling at the moment. Okay, and then our guy says, "Did you have a particular price range in mind? I can give you an offer now." And they say, "What's your offer?" So this property got pushed to our acquisitions team member to comp out and provide an offer. So one thing that I hope you're picking up here is that we emphasize conversations. A lot of investors, unfortunately, want to go for the cheap, like shot, and they just want to, go for the easy kill. Basically, I don't know the best way to say it. I'm sort of lost for an analogy right now, but they basically just want to say, I'm a cash buyer. I can buy your house all cash in 30 days. Guys, okay, no. I don't care what medium you're using. If it's direct mail, ringless voicemail, especially text messaging, they don't know anything about you. You have to establish rapport, and you have to come from a very personable angle. I say the more targeted the marketing method, like for instance, text messaging, this is extremely targeted. The more personable your message needs to be, because then it's going to seem a little sketch to the seller if you're texting them and then they haven't messaged you before. You're not mentioning your company name. You're using a very generic company name. They don't know who you are, right? So some people automatically be put back just by you texting, but you don't want to put off other people by not going at them properly. And this is another reason why Ethan and I are huge proponents of just starting this wholesaling houses future alliance group, because we see a lot of miseducation out there and a lot of investors not basically giving us a good name. So they're not giving us a good name because they're not doing things correctly. They're not doing things professionally. I'm not saying you have to be all uptight in here, but just remember, you want to be establishing rapport. And this is the best way I've found to establish rapport without dedicating a lot of resources, meaning having my acquisitions team members sit here and text message sellers, right? Their time isn't worth that. So that's another good example. Let's go over a couple more. So say somebody just mentions the price. This is the same thing as them just asking for an offer. Okay, they said 225. So we actually have our supervisor over our VAs. If it's above 225,000, we'll go and we'll research the property. Depending on the location, it just may be like way too high. Everything selling might be selling for 20 to 50,000. Sometimes, however, if it's above $200,000, we may respond like this. Okay, this is an unreasonable price for most areas that we're targeting. If you're in New York City, some areas in California, South Florida, right? You may be paying $200,000 for properties. But most often than not, in most of the active wholesaling areas, $200,000 is going to be close to retail or unreasonable as far as the price that we need a contract to that. So we asked them, what's the condition of the property? Have you done any updates in the last 10 months? In this particular situation, our virtual assistant must have not liked what they saw online. It might have been brand new, it might have been upgraded, and just said, hey, we'll pass. So that's perfectly fine for a response like that. This is somebody who also asked how much you're offering, and then we went and pasted our response there, and we get them talking, right? So think, could your virtual assistant, by cold calling, gather this much information? I know in all the years we were cold calling, even hiring American cold callers, we didn't get this detailed of information. And the great thing is they can have multiple conversations going on at one time because, there may be, a minute between responses, 10 minutes, an hour, right? So as soon as the messages come in, they get they'll pop to the top here and they'll have this little bubble so they know that seller responded back. So they just kept the conversation ongoing. If the seller responds back, great. If they don't, hey, we're going to hit them again. And I'll discuss with you our marketing schedule here shortly once I go through a few more responses. So oftentimes we can screen these sellers that come through and may just end the conversation and prevent them from getting to our acquisitions managers and wasting their time. So this was a good example of that. If they don't respond back, we won't push them through because they just ended the conversation. Once you start asking a lot of questions, most of these guys will not want to respond back. If they're motivated, they'll respond back. Okay, here's somebody who said they've thought about selling, but it needs some work. Now, this is almost like somebody who says yes, but they started talking about it needs some work. So we could start the conversation. Given it's as is condition, what do you think it will appraise for? So I love this. I love that they're doing this because this is like high level conversations here for virtual assistants to have. I know it may not seem that impressive to you, like an investor who's doing this full time, but the fact that I could just jump in here and realize that my leads are being handled properly without having to worry about it is like amazing. It takes so much off my plate. So they said, okay, so I have, but need some work. And that's on our sheet too. Okay, so if somebody says it doesn't need any upgrades, which obviously here they're saying it needs some work, so no upgrades, this is a response. So these are responses we get a lot, like all the time. So given this as its condition, what do you think it'll appraise for? Boom. They copy and paste it right there. And then that just continues the conversation. And then so you can see that once they name a price, guys across the street. So with those upgrades, they said, what price would you get excited about selling for? Boom. Pasted that there. He said, if somebody offered me 110 with no fuss, for me, I would take it. And if it's underneath 200K, we'll go ahead and we'll put that inside of our Podio for our acquisitions members to call. So this is great. They were able to screen the lead for our acquisitions team member, and it worked perfectly. I love seeing that. And these are just some more examples. I'm thinking you get pretty much the gist of what we're doing here. So we like keeping the door open, especially if somebody has sold their house, right? So we'll respond back to them. We'll let them know that, let us know if anybody else is looking to sell. We've actually had people refer other people to us because there were individuals that sold properties, but they knew others that wanted to sell. And same thing here. How do you get my information? Went through the sheet. So let's go ahead and discuss the sort of like time frame that we use and the marketing schedule that we use to market to our sellers. This is what our marketing schedule looks like. We message around 10K sellers per day, so 10,000. And we'll hit anywhere from 100K to 200 sellers per month. This is an extremely high volume, and I definitely realize that. This isn't typical, but you can take these same practices and apply them to your business. Just realize that the lead flow and the responses will be low. If you want your phone to be ringing off the hook all day, every day, and you have a huge team, well, not a huge team, but if you have a lot of virtual assistants to handle the messages, then I suggest pulling a list of 100,000 sellers and hitting that. I mean, you will get deals. You will get a lot of deals out of that and a lot of contracts, and you'll have leads. So we need to be marketing every single day. You need leads coming in every single day. So what I suggest doing is actually taking the total number of sellers that you have and dividing that by 20. So Monday through Friday, 5 business days out of the week. That'll be basically how many sellers you should message a day. So if you have 20,000 phone numbers on your list, then divide that by 20, and you'll be targeting 1,000 sellers per day. So what we do is we will hit a list twice. So we'll hit the list. So say we hit a list of 50,000 sellers the first week in June. So it's the first week in June. So we'll actually recycle that list and hit them again on the third week. So we won't do back-to-back weeks. We want to give it a break. And so we'll hit another list the second week in June, and then we'll hit that list we hit in the second week of June on the fourth week of June. Then what we'll do is probably take a break for a month since we have so many phone numbers and so many lists, and we'll market to it again. So June, July, and August. And it's like we're hitting the list again. So you may say that seems excessive, will the response rates go down? The great thing is that the longer you keep your list, the more often, the more likely that sellers will want to sell. So in one of my markets, I actually am targeting a list and have only closed deals off of a list I put in 2017. Late 2017, early 2018. It is June 2019. I pulled that list darn near 2 years ago. And that's all I have closed were deals off of that list. I haven't pulled any new lists this year. So don't be afraid to remarket to your list, but don't beat the list up, right? So it varies by location, but for what we're seeing across the board, it makes sense just to target the list every other week for a month. Every other week for a month, and then hold off for like a month, and then target it again the following month. So let's talk about our KPIs. So these are key performance indicators. A lot of people have asked me how many sellers will respond to their messaging. And we're at about 5 to 10% response rate, which is insane for any marketing stream. So with the amount of money that we're spending and the amount of leads we're getting, it is a really good return on investment and cost per lead. So 5 to 10%, and we're not spending crazy amounts of money on list, right? So we pretty much incur our skip tracing costs, and we're paying about 5 cents per text message. So our cost per lead is really low right now. And the great thing about it is we don't have to re-skip trace the list later on. The likelihood of these sellers changing their phone numbers, especially if they're over 60 years old, is little to none. They're going to keep these phone numbers probably till they die. I mean, that's just the fact of it. I know older people don't like change. They don't like upgrading phones. They're probably going to keep the same phone or same phone number for a long time. So what you'll find is when you want to message these sellers again, the only price you're incurring is the price to message them. If you were to do direct mail, it'll cost you 40, 50, 60 cents, whatever you're getting charged right now from your mail vendor to target these sellers again, which is huge. So that's another reason why I like text message marketing. So overall, 60% of your list will be landlines and 40% will be cell phones. It may vary, but I haven't seen more than about 55 to 60% of cell phones. If you are not able to get what ratio is cell phones and landlines, you need to switch your skip tracing provider like ASAP, because most likely than not, you have all landlines. So that's pretty much the balance. And you need to be able to see when the phone numbers were reported to the phone companies. So we have a date that was reported whenever we skip trace our records with our skip tracing company that we own. And we're also able to see, like I said, the landlines and cell phones on it, which is great. So we get about 2 to 3 phone numbers per record. So each seller will have anywhere from 2 to 3 phone numbers on it. 1 cell phone, 1 landline. But we also do the most 3 updated cell phones, just in case somebody has 2 cell phones. They might have a work one and they might have a personal one. We want all of them. So your response rate is going to be anywhere between 5 to 10%, meaning that if you send out 1,000 texts, you're going to get 50 to 100 responses. So if we send off 10,000 texts like we do a day, we're going to get 500 to 1,000 responses back. Now, that doesn't really mean anything to me. That's like a pat on the back statistic. I don't really focus on response rates. That doesn't do anything for me. I actually focused on the motivated seller response rate. So I can guarantee when we send off text message, we'll get a 0.2 through 0.4% response rate. So what does that mean? It means out of 10,000 sellers, and I mean motivated seller response rate, meaning people that say, yes, I'm interested in selling my house. So we'll get for 40 people, anywhere from 20 to 40 people that say, yes, I want to sell. That response rate is more meaningful to me. You know, it's like with direct mail. You could say, oh, I'm getting 2% direct mail. Well, what percentage of people say they want to sell? Probably nobody if you're getting a 2% response rate. You'll have to message like or mail 50,000 people just to get a handful of qualified leads. So the thing I like about text messaging also is that you're able to get more motivated sellers with a less amount of sellers that you're messaging. Also, our deal to closure rate is around 1 deal per 10K sellers. So what does that mean? If we message a brand new list, so say we skip traced it today and message 10K sellers, we'll contract a deal out of that probably within the first week, and within the next 30 days that will close. That won't be the only deal that we close out of that amount. So remember when I said earlier, we'll retarget the list? What happens is that over the next anywhere between 1 to 3 months, as we retarget the list and follow up with the sellers that came in that were leads, like warm leads, another 5 to 10 deals will drop. So imagine if you have a list of 100,000 sellers, like we're targeting, and the next month we have another 100,000 sellers, and the next month we have another 100,000 sellers. Guys, it becomes a little bit overwhelming with how many qualified leads there are. You're pretty much, at this point, we just work with the sellers that want 50 cents on a dollar. Like, to be honest, we're probably throwing away a lot of leads, but that's just where we're at because everything's systemized right now. And any more involvement from us will require us essentially change our system. And it's just running really well right now. So remember, guys, I'll leave you with this. It's a numbers game. You want to focus on volume. So while text messaging, skip tracing and stuff works and we love it, it's still a volumes game. A lot of people think they can skip trace a list of 100 sellers and message them and get motivated responses back. So let's just say if you have 100 phone numbers, let's just do our numbers down 0.004. You know, that's not even a full seller. That's a half a seller. To get 1 lead, what would you need? Let's see if you have a list of 500 times 0.0. Okay, so if you had a list of 500, you expect about 2 sellers. I don't think that's enough to close a deal because we're getting about, I would say, taking about 30 to 40 leads to close a deal. So you'll need a list, like I said, of 10,000. Just go ahead and make that investment. And I'm breaking the numbers down here because this is true for any market. With direct mail, cold calling, RVM, I cannot track my KPIs to this level. And this is something that I really like. I need to be able to say specifically, when we message this many sellers, we're going to get a minimum of this many sellers back. And that is true across the board. I've not been wrong once, right? With direct mail, there's a lot of variables. You don't know if the mail sent. You don't know if the addresses are correct. You don't know, like, there's a bunch of things. Their messaging could be off. A multitude of things can go wrong. Same thing with RVM. The same thing with cold calling. It could be the cold caller who's handling the call. With this, we take a lot of the variables out because why? They're copy and pasting our proven responses, which I suggest you should do as well. And the lists that we pull, we already know work really well. Really, there's no room for error. If something's wrong, we can easily diagnose it. So if if it's not performing well, we know it's either our list, our skip tracing that we're using, or that's pretty much it. Or something's wrong with our text messaging app. But it won't be our list that we pull because I'm pulling our list through our list vendors that guaranteed work. Also, what I'm doing is we're using our skip tracing, so we don't have to worry about that. And if something's wrong with the application, we can easily know, like if our messages aren't sending off. So basically what I'm saying is foolproof right now for us. So that's a good overview. Guys, if you have any questions, please comment. I know this video was a little bit lengthy, but I wanted you to really understand the whole process. And you can do this right now in CallRail. But also, too, I'm going to make the text messaging application open to everybody, probably in a little bit. If you're rewatching this at a later date and you don't know the link to it, just shoot me a message or post in the group. And really looking forward to dropping some more knowledge for you guys, and also just helping you guys get to the next level with your wholesaling companies. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to message me or post in the group. Thanks, guys.